The American landscape painter Albert Bierstradt influenced the art world and moved a nation. His art was impactful to the Western migration and contributed to conservation efforts of establishing nationally protected lands. At the start of his career, he traveled to Europe and established his interest in landscapes. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful in finding a classical art mentor and rejected the training altogether. Conveniently, though, as an artist, Bierstadt was more inclined to do plein air style sketching while traveling, and would typically use his sketches to complete full scale works. Therefore, when Albert moved back to the United States and was allowed to explore the West, he was able to expand his portfolio of references and works. According to Aaron Monroe from Smart History, Albert was employed as part of a geological survey, attempting to gather information on flora and fauna in the region, during which he became fascinated with and inspired by the native peoples and the landscapes of the West. Inextricable to his inspiration with the West was his style to combine several significant landmarks into a singular painting, even if geographically inaccurate, as reported by Karen Quinn from the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. This was allegedly done to provoke high emotion and demonstrate a condensed version of the region's landmarks. This magnificent works displayed his findings on the natives and were used as entertainment in the East. People marveled over the images of indigenous people which they thought were savage and exotic, despite Albert's intention to demonstrate that the natives were people with sophisticated cultures. We will now examine the portrait The Rocky Mountains, Landers Peak, 1830, which exhibits many of his trademark characteristics and their involvement in the shift of ideas surrounding the West. The landscape portrays images of a flat land encircled by rocky mountains, snowy mountain peaks, and iridescent lake. The mountains are in rows filling the background, some covered in snow and others barren with exposed brown rock. Crowning the tops of the white mountains are pillowy soft white clouds, which is symbolic of God's relationship to the western landscapes. The lake is behind an encampment and has a waterfall with rapid opalescent waters, creating harmony between the ideas of stillness and transformation. Additionally, there are corresponding figures displaying indigenous life and daily practice throughout the foregrounds. Representing daily life provoked imaginations in Americans of idealized life in the West. These figures were used as comparison to gauge the size of massive landscapes. Albert's works inadvertently served as promotion for the movement to the west. The grandness of his works highlighted resources and land available to migration. Consequently, settlers began to move to the west as the manifest destiny became more popular, causing harm to many ecosystems. To combat the encroachment of settlers, he became a founding member of the Boone and Crockett Club led by Theodore Roosevelt. The club was the first conservation group committed to preserving wildlife and animals. This included advocating for legislation to restrict the poaching of American bison in Yellowstone. Similarly, Albert Bierstadt assisted John Muir with conservation efforts to establish nationally protected lands by using his art. An example of this is the painting The Last of the Buffalo, 1888. According to Fry, this painting brought together the major themes of Albert's career and called for action to prevent the extinction of the buffalo. Bierstadt's efforts were also allocated towards historical recordings of the likeness of the indigenous people and their culture. Some critics argue through this recordings, he humanized the native life and removed harmful stereotypes. It has also been implied that Albert Bierstadt hoped that by humanizing the people, the hunt for native lives would stop and they would be able to preserve their history. However, his efforts for the natives did not reach their full potential, whereas his actions towards preserving wildlife and animals successfully established national parks and recreation sites. Yet, as the years passed and more people settled in the West, they no longer needed Albert's landscapes to entertain them. Additionally, he lost viewers' interest due to the rise of modern art and his repetitive use of the same techniques and subjects throughout his career. All in all, in the eyes of Impressionism, Albert was obsolete. Consequently, it wasn't until the 1960s that his art resurfaced. Then, art historians began researching and accrediting Albert Bierstradt for his contributions to the American landscape paintings. His works were widely displayed originally in Brooklyn. If you'd like to see more of his works today, he is currently being displayed at the Whitney Western Museum, Wyoming.